My only role here is to be together with Josep Borrell throughout the press conference. So this is your press conference, and you can start, and then we will have time for questions. I would like to thank the media for coming to this course that we've been organizing for several years at the Madalena. As you know, this is, I'm not sure if the 22nd on QUO VADIS EUROPA. It not always had this name. We started without this head for all the courses, but after the 10th edition, we saw that the course was being consolidated and we decided to give it a trademark. But if I'm not wrong, 22 years ago, because we started in the year 2000, in the last weeks of August, the university hosts a week on the reflection of what is Europe. Last year, obviously, we focused on Afghanistan, and this year, of course, on Ukraine, but not only Ukraine. As Europeans, we face important challenges in technology. In the world, there is a battle for technological supremacy. We will also address the Chinese relationship that is not as conflictive as the one with Russia. It's a relationship that has to concern us because the history of the world would be written out through the Indian Pacific area, and the role of China would be very important. We have 15 lecturers, and this year a high level of participants that it goes beyond 100. So once again, thank you, Rector, for hosting us. I hope this is an interesting course for the attendees. This morning we had a conversation with the journalist from the Le Monde, Sylvie Kaufman, and we've gone over the most important issues in current affairs. And I hope you can get some other headlines throughout the course. We're really sorry, but she's not using a microphone, so we cannot get sound for the question, so we cannot interpret from the booth. Sorry for this. Yes, not only Europe, all the member states, Canada, UK, US, they're all supplying military material, and some countries are also supplying the necessary training to use this. For example, the UK is doing so, and recently there was a conference in Copenhagen to address these issues. The European Union deploys missions of military training with the armies of the countries with whom we cooperate. We've done this in Mali until recently. We've also started in Mozambique. We've also done so in Niger and Chad. In many countries, we have 17 missions deployed throughout the world. So it is reasonable that in a war that is lasting and that seems is going to last requires an effort not only in the supply of material but also regarding training and aid in the organization of their army. So that's what we are discussing, and we will continue discussing throughout the next week. And in fact, the next Monday in Prague, in the Council of Defense Ministers, we will discuss this issue, and I hope it's approved. And I'm really sorry because once again we cannot interpret the questions because they're not using a mic.
Todo el mundo echa la culpa a Ucrania, pero la culpa de esto no tiene un sentido económico. China posiblemente, yo no lo sé. ¿Cómo se puede solucionar este tinglado de civiles, cuestiones importantes para las industrias?
No.
Well, I cannot give you a detailed answer because I don't know what are the lacks of supply that the industries in Cantabria have specifically or in Spain in general terms. Before the war, the trade flows were fully distorted because of the pandemic. So let's not blame everything on Ukraine. The pandemic already distorted the trade flows in the world. There was a stop of production and exchange, so the world economy was frozen for some time. The consequence of the war has been an effect on specific sectors that has to do with elements that have to do with energy and food. But I don't believe that is the specific case of Cantabria. Energy, maybe, but it's affecting everyone, but not Cantabria specifically. So there are industries, for example, if you want to purchase a car in Europe, you have to wait for a year. It seems absurd, but in fact, until recently, you want to purchase a car and you would have to wait, but you have to wait because there's no semiconductors, and semiconductors are mainly purchased in Southeast Asia and more specifically in Taiwan. So of course there's a distortion of the economic trade flows, but let's not blame everything on the war in Ukraine. Ukraine has caused problems in the food flows because of the Russian blockage that is being avoided or overcome because of the help of the United Nations and Turkey. Let's acknowledge this, and we hope it's normalized because we're talking about 20 million tons of wheat and oil. And if the world doesn't have 20 million tons of food products, then there's someone that is not going to get food. I'm sorry once again, but they're not using the microphone.
Es en efecto otro tema que
Yes, in fact, this is another issue that doesn't have to do with Ukraine, but we haven't addressed today much, and we will address in future days. Is it possible to make the agreement, the GCPOA, which is a name for the nuclear agreement, is something we can be able to bring in the right path. The situation is the following, and I can explain it because it's no secret. Was a proposal as coordinator of the negotiations, saying we've reached this point. This is the balance that I believe we can achieve. I don't believe we can make it better for one side or the other. I communicated this to those participating in the negotiation, that is the US and Iran, but also others like the British, French, Chinese, and the Russians. There was a response from Iran that I considered reasonable. This was transmitted to the US. The US has not formally provided a response, but we are waiting for their response. And I hope that this response allows us to end the negotiation. That's my hope, but I cannot assure you that this will happen. The response should have been received already. We had planned a meeting in Vienna last week. It wasn't possible, and it might happen this week. The world would be a safer place if we were able to make this agreement be in place. It was in place and worked well until President Trump unilaterally decided to abandon it. Iran was complying with it and continued to do so for a few months more. Now We need to make sure that everyone complies with it, that Iran stops its nuclear program, and that it receives the financial compensations that were foreseen in the initial agreement. And we're really sorry, but we don't get direct sounds for the questions, so we're not able to. Now, regarding the Ibero-American situation, and I don't know if I may be wrong with them, I believe that there's no middle class, but also no leaders in Latin America that will be anti-Europe if they would be in Europe. Well, more than a question, I would say that's a comment. Let's leave it for another day. Going back to the question on the mission of training in Ukraine, could you tell us what the deployment will be? What would it mean? Because there's other 17 more in Europe. Could you give us more details? I'm sorry, but I cannot anticipate the details of an agreement that has to be forged with all the member states. Of course, it would be an important mission, because we are before a big scale war. Maybe here at El Sardinero we don't perceive so, but this is a conventional real war, not a symmetric guerrilla war or with terrorist attacks. No, this is a war that mobilizes means that are extremely important, as well as hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Therefore, any mission has to be at the level of the conflict. This is not a small war. 10 million Ukrainians have left their country. It's like if 20% of Spaniards had to leave Spain. Mr. Borrell, I would like to ask about Europe being able to store the. Do you believe that Europe is going to be able to store all the energy that it wants to store to face the future? Well, up till now, things are going really well. We're over what we expected, and the stock levels are over 70%, almost reaching an 80% in some countries. So the liquid and natural gas storage is something that we're doing at a good rhythm. Spain has the capacity of a lot of Europe, and it's at an 80%. So the process is going quite well. Things are going well. But of course, it will depend on if we're able to fill the deposits. Up till now, the gas is coming, but it's through the pipeline. We're only receiving at 20% of the capacity, and Russia has said that in the next 3 days they're going to stop their supply. But everything seems to show us that we can start the winter with a good stock level. This doesn't mean that we will, of course, need to maintain the savings and reduction policy. And this is something that we need to speak about to our citizens. All European countries have committed to reducing their consumption. Spain has presented a plan to do so. So this is something affecting each and every one of us. Each and every one of us has to contribute, because very small parts will be able to make a difference.
Can I ask a question in English, please? I know you can't give all the details of the training mission because it's still in negotiation, but can you tell us where this training mission would operate? Will it be on the territory of Ukraine or on the territory of member states? And do you already have member states that have volunteered to host such a training mission? Thank you.
It will not be in Ukrainian. It will not be in Ukraine. It will be in the neighbor countries, which already have training missions. They already train. There are a lot of Ukrainian soldiers being trained in Poland, in Czech Republic, in United Kingdom, in France. When we provide arms, these arms are quite sophisticated and they have to be used. And in order to be used, they require quite an important training. So when France provides Caesar guns, the Ukrainian soldiers have to be trained. But we are not going to do that in the Ukrainian territory.
Ricardo Fraguas para
for Emisión Cero Media. It is dedicated to the information and promotion of sustainability. You have mentioned this morning that we have suffered the syndrome of the wolf announcing when they announced the invasion of Ukraine. Could you please share with us the fact that the North American are just telling us what we could live with the nuclear plant in Ukraine, which is in danger. Is there a real risk to having a nuclear disaster? It is not only the states, the US, but the General Secretary of the UN coming back from his visit to Kiev that has warned us and that has demanded or required the denuclearization of this area. And the EU has also issued a message warning about the risk. This nuclear plant is one of the biggest in Europe, and it could be in danger. Russia is deconnecting this central nuclear plant to connect it to the nuclear Russian network. It is going to, of course, has an impact on Ukraine energy supply, of course. We have to insist on the warning of the UN Secretary of taking care about this nuclear plant because it could be severely damaged because of the war. Okay,
Pues yo creo que con eso.
I've just another question. What do you think about the Italian elections? The extreme right could get the power. What would this mean for Europe? As a Vice President of the Commission, I have the duty of not intervene in the elections or political strategies of the member state or issue any kind of opinion previously to this electoral campaign. But it is clear that with the president of the Italian Council, with Draghi, which is pro-European and deeply committed in the support to Ukraine. It was, I think, Draghi that told us that the Italian had to choose between the air condition and the peace. He was deeply committed. I don't know what is going to be the opinion of the next Italian government, but in Brussels we will follow closely the results of these elections, Italian elections. I'm sorry, but no micro is used for the question.
No tengo ni la menor idea.
I've had no clue about that. I'm sorry. I have no information about that.
Bueno, pues muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will follow the course and inform the audience. Thank you.